The hatchling's name was Sarah, and she had been crying for almost an hour. She did not cry loudly. Draconth did not weep the way humans did. Instead, a soft keening sound rose from her throat, a sound that spoke of loss deeper than words could express. Her violet scales had gone dull with grief, and her wings trembled against her back like leaves in a cold wind dot in her arms. The luminary serpent lay still and dark and dead. Kale had moved closer, though he kept his distance. He sat on a stack of empty crates about 20 feet away, close enough to see, but far enough not to intrude. From here, he could see the toy more clearly. It had been beautiful once, he could tell. The serpent's body was made of dozens of thin crystal threads woven together in patterns that caught and held light. Small resonance crystals dotted its spine, and its eyes were made of something that looked like captured lightning. But one of the crystals had cracked. Kale could see the fracture line running through it like a dark wound. And without that crystal, the light threads had begun to unravel. The toy was dying, piece by piece. An older Draconth approached Syra. He wore the formal robes of a station teacher, and his scales were the deep gold of age and experience. He spoke to her in their native tongue, his voice gentle. Kale could not understand the words, but he understood the meaning. The teacher was trying to comfort her, trying to tell her that it was just a toy, that she could get another. Syra's response needed no translation. She clutched the serpent tighter and shook her head, her keening growing louder for a moment before fading back to that soft, heartbroken sound. The teacher sighed and walked away. He had done what he could. Kale waited until the crowd had thinned before he approached her. He moved slowly, carefully, the way his father had taught him to approach frightened animals. When he was about 10 feet away, Syra's head snapped up. Her eyes fixed on him with a mixture of wariness and hostility. Kale stopped. He held up his hands, showing that they were empty. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Human and Draconth, two children from worlds that had nothing in common. Then Kale spoke. His voice was soft, and he chose his words carefully. What happened to it? Syra's eyes narrowed. When she spoke, her voice was rough from crying, and her accent made the common tongue sound like music played on strange instruments. The Toymaker would not fix it. He said it was too old. He said the parts do not exist anymore. He said I should buy a new one. Her claws tightened on the serpent. I do not want a new one. This one was my mother's gift. My mother is dead. This is all I have left of her. The words hung in the air between them. Kale understood now. This was not about a toy. This was about memory. This was about love. This was about holding on to someone who was gone. Can I see it? He asked. Syra pulled the serpent closer to her chest. Her eyes were suspicious. Why? What do you want? I want to look at it. My father fixes things. I help him. Maybe I can see what is wrong. The Toymaker already said what is wrong. The crystal is broken. The threads are damaged. It cannot be fixed. Maybe, Kale agreed. But maybe I will see something different. Syra studied him for a long time. Kale could almost see the thoughts moving behind her eyes. She was young, but she was Draconth. Her people had learned long ago to be careful with their trust. But she was also desperate, and desperation made people take chances. Slowly, reluctantly, she held out the luminary serpent. Kale took it gently. The toy was lighter than he expected, almost weightless. Up close, he could see the damage more clearly. The cracked crystal had been the heart of the device, the thing that made everything else work. Without it, the light threads could not hold their pattern. The serpent's body was slowly falling apart. He turned it over in his hands, examining the construction. It was beautiful work. Master Quillex was a true artist. Every joint was perfect. Every thread was exactly where it needed to be. The whole thing fit together like a puzzle that had only one solution. That was the problem, Kale realized. Quilex had built something perfect. And perfect things could only be fixed in perfect ways. If you did not have the exact right crystal, the exact right threads, the exact right tools, you could not repair it. The Toymaker had built something that only he could maintain. But Kale's father had never taught him to seek perfection. Doran had taught him something else entirely. Find the purpose. Understand what the machine is trying to do. Then find a way to help it do that thing, even if your way is not the original way. Kale looked at the serpent for a long time. He saw the cracked crystal, yes. But he also saw other things. He saw how the light threads were woven. He saw how the resonance pattern was supposed to flow. He saw, in his mind, what this toy was meant to be. It was meant to move, to glow, to respond to its owner's touch and presence. And there were other ways to make things move. Other ways to make things glow. Other ways to create resonance. None of them were Synthoran ways. None of them were perfect, but they might work. I need to take this to my father's workshop, Kale said. Can I keep it for a few days? Syra's eyes went wide with alarm. No, you cannot take it. What if you lose it? What if you break it more? It is already broken, Kale pointed out gently. I cannot make it worse, and I might be able to make it better. The Toymaker said it cannot be fixed. The Toymaker said he could not fix it. That is not the same thing. Syra stared at him, her claws flexed against her scales. Kale could see the war happening inside her. Fear against hope. Caution against need. Why? She asked at last. Why do you want to help me? I have no money. I cannot pay you. I am nothing to you. Kale thought about the question. It was a good question. The Draconths were practical people. They did not understand kindness without reason. Because you are sad, he said finally, and because I might be able to help. That is reason enough. Syra's eyes searched his face for lies. She found none. Slowly, she released her grip on the serpent. If you break it, she said, her voice barely. A whisper. If you lose even one piece of it, I will find you. Do you understand? I will find you, and I will make you sorry. Kale nodded. He believed her. The Draconths were not a people who made empty threats. I understand, he said. I will be careful, I promise. He tucked the broken toy inside his jacket, close to his heart, and walked back toward his father's stall. Behind him, Syra watched him go. Her eyes were still wet with tears, but something new had joined the grief in them. Hope. Small and fragile and afraid, but hope all the same. The Celestin Bazaar never truly slept. Even in the quiet hours when the station's artificial lights dimmed to a soft blue, there were always creatures moving between the stalls. Always the hum of deals being made in languages that numbered in the thousands. Station Viridian 9 floated at the crossroads of 6 major trade routes, and beings from every corner of the known galaxy came here to buy, sell, and dream. Kale had lived on the station for all 12 years of his life, and he still found wonder in it every single day. He sat on an overturned cargo crate behind his father's repair stall, watching the endless river of alien life flow past. There went a group of Kethvari merchants, their forearms gesturing wildly as they argued about shipping costs. Behind them walked a lone Mithrine, its body made of living crystal that chimed softly with each step. A family of Orani floated by, their jellyfish-like forms pulsing with bioluminescent light as their children darted around them in excited spirals. And there, in the distance, Kale could see the gleaming stall of Master Quilex. The Synthoran Toymaker's shop was impossible to miss. It glowed like a small sun in the middle of the bazaar, its display cases filled with creations that seemed to be made of captured starlight and frozen music. Toys that danced without strings. Toys that sang in voices of pure crystal. Toys that could read the emotions of whoever held them and respond with comfort or joy or gentle play. Everyone knew Master Quillex. He had been crafting his wonders for over 300 years, and wealthy families from across 12-star systems sent their children to his stall with heavy purses. His creations were not mere playthings. They were works of art that could last for generations. Kale had never owned a Quillex toy. He had never even touched one. Humans could not afford such things. That was the truth of the galaxy that Kale had learned young. Humans were newcomers here, while the Dracontes had been building empires before Earth's dinosaurs died. While the Syntherons had been weaving light into solid form when humans were still living in caves. Humanity had only discovered faster-than-light travel 43 years ago. In the eyes of the elder races, humans were children. Clever children, perhaps. Determined children. But children, all the same. Kale's father, Dorn, had found his place in this vast universe, the only way a human could. He fixed things. Not the grand machines of alien engineering, not the massive engines that push starships between the stars. He fixed the small things. The broken translator that a traveler could not afford to replace. The cracked heating unit that kept a poor family warm. The worn-out joints of a service robot that had been working for decades without maintenance. Doran's hands were rough with work, and his eyes were tired, but he smiled easily and charged fairly. His reputation had grown slowly over the years. Now beings from all across the station brought their broken treasures to the human tinkerer, who would try to fix anything and never laughed at anyone's problems. Kale had grown up in his father's workshop, surrounded by the guts of 100 different technologies. He had learned to read circuit patterns before he learned to read words. He had taken apart his first engine at age 6 and put it back together at age 7, better than it was before. His father had watched him work and said nothing, but there had been pride in his eyes. Now Kale kept his own notebooks, filled with drawings and theories and questions. He sketched the machines he saw in the bazaar and tried to understand not just how they worked, but why they were built the way they were. What problem was this device trying to solve? What did its maker want it to do? Once he understood the purpose, the mechanics often became clear. His father had taught him that. Understanding why something works matters more than knowing how to build it. Today, the bazaar was busier than usual. A Draconte trading vessel had docked at the station that morning, and its crew had scattered through the market like sparks from a fire. The Dracontes were rare visitors to Viridian 9. Their empire was old and proud, and they usually kept to their own systems. But their young needed education, and sometimes that education happened far from home. Kale watched a group of Dracontes move through the crowd. They were magnificent creatures, even the smallest of them. Their scales gleamed in colors that human eyes could barely process. Their wings folded against their backs like cloaks made of leather and light. Their eyes held the weight of thousands of years of civilization. One of them caught Kale's attention. Not a warrior or a merchant or a scholar, but a child. A hatchling smaller than Kale himself, with scales of deep violet that had not yet gained their adult shine. She walked alone through the bazaar, her wings tucked tight against her back, her head turning this way and that as she took in the chaos around her, and clutched against her chest. Held with both clawed hands was a toy. Kale recognized it immediately. It was a luminary serpent, one of Master Quillex's creations. Or at least it had been. Even from this distance, Kale could see that something was wrong. The serpent was dark and still. Its light threads had gone dim. It lay limp in the hatchling's arms like a dead thing. The young Draconte walked with purpose toward Quillex's stall. Her steps were steady, but Kale could see the tension in her shoulders, the desperate hope in the way she held her broken treasure. She stopped before the glowing display and waited. Master Quillex turned to face her. The Syntheron was tall and thin, his body seemingly made of glass filled with swirling light. His movements were precise and elegant, and his voice, when he spoke, rang like a struck bell. Kale was too far away to hear what was said, but he watched the hatchling hold out her broken toy. He watched Quillix examine it with careful hands. He watched the Toymaker's expression shift from interest to something else. Something dismissive. Something cold, and he watched the hatchling's shoulders fall as Quillix turned away from her. The young Draconth stood frozen for a moment. Then she gathered her dead toy back to her chest and retreated from the stall. She moved through the crowd like a ghost, her violet scales dull with misery, until she found a quiet corner away from the bustle of the market. There, she curled around her broken treasure and began to cry. Kale watched. He said nothing. He did not move from his crate, but his eyes stayed fixed on the weeping hatchling, and his mind began to turn. His father had taught him many things over the years. How to read a circuit, how to trust his hands, how to see the purpose behind the mechanics. But the most important lesson Doran had ever taught his son was simpler than all of that. When someone is hurting, you help them. That was what it meant to be human. Kale did not know yet what he would do, but as he watched the hatchling cry over her broken toy, he knew that he would do something. The question was how. The workshop was small and crowded and smelled of machine oil and burnt metal. Shelves lined every wall, and each shelf was filled with parts. Gears and circuits and broken pieces of technology from 100 different worlds. Doran never threw anything away. You never knew when a piece of junk might become exactly what you needed. Kale placed the luminary serpent on the workbench and turned on the bright lamp above it. The light fell on the toy like a spotlight, revealing every detail of its construction. Under the harsh glow, the damage looked even worse than before. The cracked crystal had fractured further during transport. 2 more light threads had come loose. Doran came to stand beside his son. He looked at the toy for a long moment, his rough hands clasped behind his back. Quillix's work, he said. It was not a question. Yes, it belongs to a Draconth girl. Her mother gave it to her before she died. The Toymaker refused to fix it. I am not surprised. Quillix builds perfect things. Perfect things are hard to repair when they break. Doran reached out and touched one of the loose threads with a gentle finger. This is fine work. Very fine. Beyond my skill, I know. Kale looked up at his father. But maybe not beyond mine. Doran raised an eyebrow. He did not speak, but his eyes asked a question. The crystal is broken, Kale explained. It creates a specific resonance frequency that makes the light threads hold their shape. Without it, the threads unravel. The serpent dies. And you think you can replace the crystal? No, I cannot find another Sintaran crystal. They are too rare and too expensive. But I think I can create the same frequency a different way. Doran was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. Show me. Kale pulled out his notebook and flipped to a page covered in calculations. He had been working on this since he got back to the stall, his mind racing ahead of his pencil. Human piezoelectric elements, he said, pointing to a diagram. We use them in speakers and sensors. They vibrate at specific frequencies when electricity passes through them. If I can find one that matches the resonance of the broken crystal, I can use it as a replacement. The frequencies will not be exact. No, but they will be close enough. The light threads do not need perfection. They just need something to hold on to. Doran studied the diagram. His face was hard to read, but Kale knew his father well enough to see the interest behind the careful expression. And the threads themselves? They are unraveling. I will reweave them. Not with Sintaran materials. I do not have those. But fiber optics work on similar principles. Light moves through them the same way. If I weave new threads to replace the damaged ones, using human materials, the serpent should still function. It will not look the same. The glow will be different. Yes, but it will glow. And it will move. And it will remember its owner. Kale's voice grew soft. That is what matters. Not that it is perfect. That it works. That it lives. Doran was silent for a long time. Then he reached out and put his hand on his son's shoulder. Then you had better get to work. You have a lot to do. Kale worked through the night. He started by carefully removing the broken crystal, using tools so small they were almost invisible. The crystal came out in pieces, and each piece had to be documented and stored. He could not afford to lose track of anything. He had promised. Then he began searching through his father's shelves. He needed a piezoelectric element of exactly the right size and frequency. He tested dozens of them, holding each one up to his measuring equipment and checking the readings. Most were wrong. Too high, too low, too big, too small dot near midnight, he found it. A tiny element from an old human hearing aid, salvaged from a box of discarded medical equipment. The frequency was not perfect, but it was close. Very close. Close enough. He spent 3 hours modifying the element to fit the serpent's internal structure. The shape was wrong, so he had to file it down. The connections were different, so he had to build adapters. Every step was slow and careful. One mistake could ruin everything. Dawn came and went. Kale did not notice. The light threads were harder. Syntheran thread was not like anything humans made. It was woven from something that was part light and part matter, and it held its shape through principles that human science did not fully understand. Kale could not replicate it, but he did not need to replicate it. He just needed to achieve the same result. He started with fiber optic strands from a broken human communication relay. They were thicker than the Syntheran threads and less elegant, but they carried light well. He heated them carefully, stretching them thinner and thinner until they were almost as fine as the original's. Then he began to weave. His fingers cramped. His eyes burned. His back ached from bending over the workbench. But he did not stop. He could not stop. Every time he thought about resting, he remembered the sound of Syra crying. The soft keening of a child who had lost everything. By the second night, the new threads were in place. They were not as beautiful as the originals. They had a slightly different color, more gold than silver. But they were woven tight and true, and when Kale tested them with a small current, they held their shape. On the third night, he put it all together. The modified piezoelectric element went into the space where the broken crystal had been. The new fiber threads connected to it through adapters that Kale had built by hand. The whole thing looked different from before. Anyone who knew Quillix's work would see immediately that this was not original, but that was not the point. The point was whether it would work. Kale's hands trembled as he made the final connection. He had done everything he could. He had given this project every bit of skill and knowledge he possessed. Now there was nothing left but to see if it was enough. He activated the serpent. For a moment, nothing happened. The toy lay still and dark on the workbench. Kale's heart sank. He had failed. All those hours, all that work, and he had failed. Then, slowly, a light began to glow inside the serpent's body. It was not the same light as before. It was warmer, more golden than the original silver blue. It pulsed gently, like a heartbeat. And then the serpent moved. It lifted its head. It coiled its body. It turned its tiny eyes toward Kale as if seeing him for the first time. Then it seemed to sense something else. Something invisible. A trace of emotion, a memory of love, left on its body by years of being held and cherished. The serpent recognized its owner. Even in her absence. It coiled in on itself and began to glow brighter, pulsing with something that looked very much like longing. Kale let out a breath he had not known he was holding. His eyes were wet, and he did not bother to wipe them. "Hello," he said softly to the serpent. "Welcome back." The serpent swayed gently in response. It was alive again. Different, but alive. Kale gathered it carefully into his hands and held it close to his chest. Tomorrow he would return it to Syra. Tomorrow he would see her face when she realized her. Mother's gift was no longer dead. But tonight, he simply sat in the quiet workshop, holding the glowing serpent, and let himself feel proud. He had done it. Not the right way, not the perfect way, the human way, and it was enough. Syra had not moved from her corner in 3 days. The teachers had tried to make her attend classes. The other students had tried to draw her out with offers of food and company. Even the station security officers had stopped by, worried about the small Draconte hatchling who sat alone in the shadows of the bazaar, barely eating, barely sleeping, waiting for something she was afraid would never come. She had given her mother's last gift to a stranger. A human stranger. A species she knew almost nothing about. What had she been thinking? How could she have been so foolish? Every hour that passed made the fear worse. She imagined the human boy laughing at her. She imagined him selling the broken toy for parts. She imagined him simply throwing it away, not understanding what it meant, not caring about the grief of a child he did not know. By the 3rd day, Syra had almost given up hope. That was when she saw him. The human boy walked through the bazaar with purpose, his eyes scanning the crowd. He was looking for something, looking for someone. When his gaze found Syra in her corner, he changed direction and headed straight toward her. Syra's heart began to pound. She could not read human expressions well. She could not tell if he was bringing good news or bad. She pressed herself back against the wall and waited. Kale stopped a few feet away from her. He did not speak. Instead, he slowly reached into his jacket and pulled out something small and glowing. The luminary serpent. Syra's breath caught in her throat. It was different. She could see that immediately. The glow was warmer now, more golden than the silver blue she remembered. The patterns of light moved differently, pulsing with a rhythm that was new and unfamiliar. But the shape was the same. The weight, when Kale held it out to her, looked the same. And then the serpent saw her. Its tiny head turned towards Syra. Its body coiled with sudden energy. And then it did something that made Syra's eyes fill with tears. It reached toward her. Just like it always had. Just like it had when her mother first gave it to her, years ago on a world far away. The serpent recognized her. Even after all this time. Even after being broken and dark and dead. It still knew who she was. Syra took it with trembling claws. The moment she touched it, the serpent came fully alive. It wound around her wrist, its warm glow pulsing against her scales. It pressed its small head against her palm in the exact gesture it had always used. The gesture that meant comfort and love, and I am here. Syra pulled the serpent to her chest and held it tight. She could not speak. She could not think. All she could do was feel. Her mother's gift was alive again. Different, but alive. Changed, but still hers. When she finally looked up, tears streaming down her face, the human boy was already walking away. "Wade!" she called out. Kale stopped and turned. Syra struggled to find words. In her culture, debts were sacred things. When someone did you a kindness, you repaid it. That was the law of her people, older than their empire, older than their civilization. She could not simply let this human walk away without acknowledging what he had done. Why? She asked. It was the same question she had asked before, but now it meant something different. Why did you do this? You spent days on this. I can see the work. I can see the care. No one does that for a stranger. No one does that for nothing. Kale thought about the question. His brow furrowed the way it did when he was working on a difficult problem. My father taught me something, he said finally. He taught me that when someone is hurting, you help them. You do not ask what you will get in return. You do not worry about whether they deserve it. You just help. Because that is what good people do. Cyrus stared at him. The words was simple. Almost foolishly simple. Any Draconid philosopher would have laughed at such a naive view of the universe. But Syra did not laugh. That is a strange way to live, she said. Maybe, but it is the human way. Syra looked down at the serpent in her arms. It was still glowing, still pulsing, still alive. 3 days ago, it had been dead. Now it was here, warm against her chest, because a human boy had decided that her pain mattered more than his sleep. The work you did, she said slowly. It is not Syntheran work. The materials are different. The techniques are different. How did you know it would function? Kale shrugged. I did not know. I just understood what the serpent was supposed to do, and I found a different way to help it do that thing. The method does not matter, only the result. The Toymaker would say the method matters very much. The Toymaker could not fix it. I could. Syra had no answer for that dot. She looked at the human boy standing before her. He was small for his age, thin and unremarkable. His clothes were worn and his hands were rough. He was nothing like the powerful beings who ruled the galaxy. He came from a species that had only been part of the greater civilization for a few short decades, and yet he had done something that one of the most famous craftsmen in the galaxy had refused to do. I will remember this, Syra said. Her voice was formal now, carrying the weight of her people's ancient traditions. I will remember what you did, and I will make sure others remember as well. Kale looked uncomfortable. That is not necessary. I did not do this for reward or recognition. I know. That is why it matters. Syra straightened her spine, her wings spreading slightly behind her. My people have long memories, human. We do not forget those who help us. And we do not forget those who show us things we did not expect to see. She stepped forward and pressed her snout gently against his hand. It was the Draconid gesture of bonded friendship, rarely given and never given lightly. You have shown me something today, she said softly. You have shown me that kindness does not need a reason. That help can come from places we never expected. That sometimes the ones the galaxy looks down upon are the ones who see most clearly. She pulled back and met his eyes. I will not forget, and neither will my people. Kale did not seem to know how to respond. He simply nodded, his face flushed with embarrassment. Take care of the serpent, he said. The new part should last for years, but if anything goes wrong, bring it back to me. I will fix it again. I will. He turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd of the bazaar. Syra watched him go, the glowing serpent held close to her heart. She thought about her mother, who had given her this gift so many years ago. She thought about the Toymaker, who had dismissed her grief as unimportant. And she thought about the human boy, who had asked for nothing and given her everything. Her people had ruled the stars for thousands of years. They had built empires and conquered worlds and achieved wonders beyond counting. But perhaps, Syra thought, there were still things they could learn. She looked down at the serpent, watching its golden glow pulse against her violet scales. Different, but alive. Changed, but still full of love. Maybe that was true of more than just toys. Maybe that was true of people as well. The message reached Draken Prime in less than a day. Syra had sent it through the official diplomatic channels, marked with her family seal. Her family was old and respected, and when their youngest daughter sent an urgent message from a distant station, people paid attention. The message was short but detailed. It told the story of a broken toy and a careless toymaker. It told the story of a human boy and 3 nights of silent work. And it asked a simple question. Is this not worth investigating? Lord Vithorim read the message in his private chambers. He was old, even by Dracone's standards, and he had seen many things in his long life. But this story made him pause. Humans, the newcomers, the children of the galaxy. Perhaps, he thought, it was time to take a closer look at these children. He arrived at Station Viridian 9 3 days later. The bazaar fell silent when he entered. Lord Vithorum was not just any Dracont. He was a trade ambassador, yes, but he was also something more. He was a witness, one of the ancient order whose task was to observe and remember. When a witness took notice of something, it meant the thing would be recorded in the great histories of the Dracont people. And now a witness had come to a small repair stall run by a human. Tinker and his son, Kale, did not understand why this was happening. He had returned to his normal life after giving Syra back her serpent. He had gone back to helping his father, back to studying his notebooks, back to watching the endless flow of alien life through the bazaar. The encounter with the Dronkavaday hatchling had felt important at the time, but he had not expected anything to come of it. Now he stood before one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, and he had no idea what to say. Syra stood beside Lord Vithorum. She was different now. Her scales were brighter, her wings held higher. The serpent was coiled around her wrist, glowing with warm golden light. "This is the one," she said. "This is the human who fixed my mother's gift." Vithorum's ancient eyes studied Kale. The weight of that gaze was almost physical. Kale felt as though he were being examined not just by a person, but by history itself. "Show me," the witness said. Kale brought out the serpent. With Syra's permission, he pointed out the modifications he had made. The piezoelectric element that replaced the broken crystal. The fiber optic threads that took the place of the Synthoran weave. The adapters and adjustments that held it all together. Vithorum examined each component carefully. His claws traced the lines of Kale's work, testing the joints, checking the connections. "This is not Synthoran technique," he said. "No, Lord, it is human technique. The materials are inferior." Yes, Lord, they are what I had, and yet it functions." Yes, Lord, it functions." Vithorum was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was thoughtful. "Tell me, young human, how did you accomplish this? You did not have the proper tools. You did not have the proper materials. You did not have the knowledge of Synthoran craft. By all logic, this repair should have been impossible." Kale thought about the question. It was not a simple question, and it deserved more than a simple answer. "I did not try to repair it the Synthoran way," he said finally. "I could not. I did not have what I needed for that. So instead, I tried to understand what the toy was supposed to do. What was its purpose? What did it need to achieve? Once I understood that, I looked for different ways to achieve the same result." "You improvised." "Yes, Lord. Humans do that a lot. We have to. We do not have the centuries of knowledge that other species have. We do not have the advanced technologies or the perfect techniques. All we have is the ability to look at a problem and find a way around it." Vithorum nodded slowly. Then he turned to address the crowd that had gathered around the stall. There were many species present now. Synthorans and Kethvari and Orani and dozens of others. Even Master Quillex had emerged from his gleaming shop to see what was happening. "I have lived for over 800 years, Vithorum said. His voice carried easily through the silent bazaar. "I have watched the rise and fall of empires. I have seen technologies born and die and be forgotten. I have observed the great patterns of galactic civilization unfold across the ages." He gestured toward Kale. "And I have never seen anything quite like this." The crowd stirred. Whispers passed from being to being. "The elder races have spent thousands of years perfecting our methods," Mithorim continued. We have achieved wonders beyond counting. But in our pursuit of perfection, we have perhaps lost something. We have forgotten that perfection is not the same as purpose. We build marvels, but we sometimes forget why we build them. He looked at Kale with something approaching warmth. This human child remembered what we have lost. He did not ask whether he had the right tools or the right knowledge. He asked only one question: "Can I help?" And when the answer was not obvious, he found a way. Vithram straightened to his full height. His wings spread behind him like banners. I am a witness. It is my duty to observe and remember. And today I have witnessed something worth remembering. I have witnessed kindness without expectation. I have witnessed skill guided by compassion. I have witnessed the child of a young species showing the elder races what we have forgotten. He turned to face Kale directly. On behalf of the Draconth Trade Consortium, I offer you sponsorship to the Artificer Academies of Draken Prime. You will be the first human ever granted this honor. Your education will be paid for. Your future will be secured. This is our thanks for what you have done. Kale's mouth fell open. He could not speak. He could not think. His father stepped forward, his rough hands shaking. Lord Vithorm, this is too much. My son only did what any decent person would do. And that, Vithorm said gently, is precisely the point. The crowd began to disperse, buzzing with conversation. The story would spread. Kale knew it would spread. Within days, everyone on the station would know what had happened. Within weeks, the tale would reach other systems. The human boy who fixed what the master toymaker could not. But Kale barely noticed. He was looking at Syra, who stood beside him with her serpent glowing against her scales. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You did not have to do this." Syra pressed her snout against his hand once more. "You fix more than my toy," she said. You reminded them that kindness is its own technology. The galaxy needed to see that. I just made sure they did. Across the bazaar, Master Quilex watched the human boy surrounded by admirers and well-wishers. He thought about the hatchling he had turned away. He thought about the broken toy he had dismissed as worthless. He thought about all the small griefs he had ignored over his long career, because they were not important enough, not profitable enough, not interesting enough, that he wondered how many other opportunities he had missed, how many chances to matter he had let slip away. The witness had called the human's approach something the elder races had forgotten, perhaps. Quilex thought it was time to remember. He turned and walked back into his shop. Tomorrow, he would look through his old designs. Tomorrow, he would find the toys he had declared obsolete and unfixable. Tomorrow, he would start trying again, and across the station. In a small repair stall that would never quite be the same. A human boy and his father stood together and watched the crowds thin and the lights dim toward evening. "I am proud of you," Doran said quietly. Kale smiled. It was a tired smile, but it was real. "I just did what you taught me, Father. I helped someone who was hurting." "Yes," Doran agreed. "You did." He put his arm around his son's shoulders. And the galaxy noticed. Far away, in systems that did not yet know the name Kale, the story was already beginning to spread. A small story, perhaps. A simple story. A story about a broken toy and a crying child and a boy who decided to help. But small stories have a way of growing. And this one was only just beginning.